When I started my first yoga class, I remember the day the teacher introduced us to Pigeon Pose. When I tried getting into the pose, I quickly realized I couldn't do it. I would feel this burning sensation in my hips as I attempted to fold over my leg. I thought I wasn't flexible enough, but later I learned that that wasn't the only reason. So why can't you do Pigeon Pose? The reason you can't do Pigeon Pose is that you haven't developed the necessary strength and flexibility the glutes require. In this video, we are going to go over many variations and modifications you could work on in order to help you get into Pigeon Pose. At the end of the video, we're also going to give you a few glute strengthening poses to practice to help build up towards Pigeon Pose. For some of you, the main reason you can't do Pigeon Pose is because maybe your instructor has shown you a method that is causing you pain. The instructor may be showing you a position that causes your bent knee to form at a right angle with your lower leg. This type of positioning is only meant for people that are more flexible and may cause damage to your piriformis muscle if done incorrectly. First, to get into Pigeon Pose, first start off in tabletop position. Bring your left leg back, pointing the toes at the wall. Now slowly bring your left knee toward the front of your mat. Now with your left knee, place it off to the side of your hip instead of keeping it in aligned with your hip. When you keep the knee in aligned with your hip, this is where most people experience problems in this posture. So practice keeping it a little bit wider, and with your shin, keep it in between a 90-degree angle and fully bent. Experiment to see which feels good for your leg. Point the toes of your right foot towards the back of the room. Inhale and expand your chest upward. Keep your gaze focused upward toward the ceiling and hold here for 3 breaths. Maintain a nice long spine. Slowly fold over and use your arms as support to bring your torso closer to the mat. Take your time with this part. Eventually, you'll be able to rest your forehead on the mat with enough practice. Remember, if you can't fold over completely, use blocks to bring the floor closer to you. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it. This is a very intense pose and it is going to take time for your body to adjust. Let's go over some Pigeon Pose variations. Reclined Pigeon Pose. In this pose, you are going to lie down on your back, bend both knees, and place them on the mat. Place your right ankle just above your left knee. Slide your right hand through the space between your leg and left hand on the opposite side of your leg, and gently pull your left leg toward your body. Make sure your right foot is flexed the entire time. Hold for a couple breaths. With your right foot, you could either keep it flexed or relaxed the entire time. Take notice with what feels good for you. Hold for a couple breaths and repeat on the other side. Now the next variation is seated Pigeon Pose. For this pose, it is going to require you to sit on the ground or in a chair. While on the chair, sit up tall. Bring your right ankle over your left leg. Make sure you support your right knee with your right hand and your right foot with your left hand. Exhale and pull yourself closer to your leg. Hold this pose for a few breaths before switching to the other leg. I also wanted to let you know that the same positioning can be applied with a person sitting down on their mat. Next up, we have lifted Pigeon Pose. For this pose, I took the artistic liberty of giving it this name. While researching different modifications of Pigeon Pose, this positioning came up while I was watching a video from Yoga with Adriene, and it never had a proper name. I just loved the variation that she showed and wanted to share it here. Now, to get into this pose, you are going to work your way towards traditional Pigeon Pose. Instead of having your toes untucked, tuck them and keep your knee bent. The goal with this pose is to reduce the stress it is having on your hip. Let's go over some yoga block modifications for Pigeon Pose. There are different locations you could place the yoga block in order to assist you. If you do not have a yoga block, you could always fold up a towel or find a very large book. One of the first locations to place the yoga block or towel is under your hip. If you notice that your hip is externally rotating to the side, causing you to become unbalanced and fall over, place the block under your hip for extra support. For those of you trying to bring your forehead to the ground and you can't quite make it, bring the ground closer to you. You could do this by placing a yoga block in front of you and resting your head on the block instead. Please do not view yoga blocks as a form of cheating. This is not a race to see who can get to the yoga pose first. Each and every one of us has a different body and anatomy, and we will progress at different rates. Now, let's go over glute strengthening poses that are going to prepare you for Pigeon Pose. Chair pose is going to help you develop your thigh and glute muscles. At first, this pose will be hard for you to hold for a couple of breaths, but with enough practice, your body will adapt. Now let's go over how to do chair pose. Let's start off in mountain pose with your big toes touching and your heels slightly separated. Bend your knees and drop your hips as if you are about to sit in a chair. Reach your arms up along the side of your ears. Make sure your palms are facing one another and your gaze is in between your palms. Fire hydrant lifts are great for activating and strengthening the glutes and hips. Doing so will improve the range of motion in your hips and make Pigeon Pose much more accessible. To do fire hydrant lifts, start in tabletop pose. Align your hands with your shoulders and your knees with your hips. Firmly press into the ground and lift your right knee to the side. When lifting your knee, maintain a 90-degree angle. Hold here for 3 breaths. Now, slowly bring your knee down and repeat on the other side. Locust is another great pose for activating and strengthening the glutes, which are so important to develop in order to be able to successfully practice Pigeon Pose. Now, how do we do Locust Pose? You're going to want to first start by lying down on your stomach with your hands by your hips and your forehead touching the mat. If you can't place your forehead on the mat, you could always turn it to the side. Now, lift your head, chest, arms, and legs off the ground. Keep your legs straight and your arms parallel to the ground with your palms up. Gaze forward and hold this pose for 3 breaths. And lastly, we have high lunge. High lunge is a great hip opener and gives you complete control over how deep you want to go into this posture. The farther you push forward with your hips, the deeper the stretch you will feel in your hip flexors. Now, how do you do high lunge? First, you're going to want to start off in downward facing dog pose. Gaze your head in between your hands and bring your right foot forward. Next, make sure your left foot is planted and your toes are slightly away from the body. Keep the heel of the back foot lifted. Ground your feet and bring your torso up. Maintain a strong base and bring your hands above your head with your palms facing each other. Push your hips forward, keeping them square to deepen the stretch. So with any of these modifications or even the main form of the posture, take it at your own pace. This isn't a race, okay? We're focusing on being the observer of our body, being the observer of our thoughts, being as present as we possibly can. It's okay if you can't do something. Focusing on progressively building yourself up is much better than just trying to impress the person next to you or trying to impress your ego. Your journey is your journey. You are already perfect just the way you are. Please, please remember that always. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you like the video, click like and subscribe. Thank you so much for being here and check out the next video.